Have you got YouTube up on your screen? Like does it say it up at the
Says
top of
it's
your
being
Zoom?
sent to a third party.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so I'm just going to get rolling here.
Sure.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. See, now it's all, yeah. I love doing this because it just means that people get to see that there is all stuff going on in the background. So, and if you've never done a live stream to YouTube or anywhere, go for it. It's fun. So, welcome everybody. This is Soul Talk with Trish on Tuesday, and I have Karen Grant with me. And I've known Karen for, I'm going to say probably close to 5, maybe 6 years, 5 years for sure. And, I talk about the favorite people in my world, and those are the people who come on to Soul Talk with me because we can have these soul-y conversations. And I am going to invite Karen to really speak from her area of expertise, which is, if you looked at um, the the descriptor below this, it really is about how do we care for the vessel that carries our soul. How do we care for the vessel that carries our soul? Because that is truly what the body, in my opinion, is all about. So, Karen, thank you for joining me. I would love it if you did a little introduction, just let people know a little bit about you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Trish. And I love the way you put that, the vessel for our soul, because of course that's what it is, right? So yeah, along with my husband, we have a business called Core Nutrition. And really what I do is I help entrepreneurs, in most cases, entrepreneurs who want to do their best work, but for whatever reason, nutrition and wellness just has not been a priority, and they need some help creating that foundation or stabilizing that foundation, shall we say, in a way that fits their lifestyle so that they can go out and do what their heart calls them to do, right? So
Love that.
that's and we do that through, helping them with nutrition, essentially.
Well, it is the building block, right? It is the thing that makes the vessel strong, right? Is understanding, what or what not to put in our bodies, and nutrition
Yeah.
is such a core part of that. I love the language that you use around that. And so for those of you who might not know much about Karen, I am going to intentionally lean into one aspect of her, of how she is navigating her life, because I think that there's just such a rich foundation for a conversation around how do you um, maintain a, a dedication to nutrition? How do you maintain a dedication to keeping your vessel strong and vital when you live with one foot in two worlds? And what I mean by that, you guys, is Karen literally lives with one foot in multiple worlds, depending on where she is. So she is a business owner. She talked about with her husband, but she is also a flight attendant. So she travels all over the world every single week. I don't think that there's many weeks that she isn't on a plane going somewhere. And if you have done any amount of travel, either for your business as an entrepreneur or just in general, you know that this is incredibly taxing on the body. Just the pure like the effort of traveling. Not to mention all the things that you do once you get there, and that kind of thing. So Karen, how did you get into first of all, how did you get into have you the flight attendant piece, and then how did nutrition really start to become a real focal point for you?
Well, I think probably nutrition was the start before I became a flight attendant, because my parents were both teachers and they got involved in a nutrition business. So I grew up around nutrition and believing that I had options. I knew I could eat a certain way and create a certain outcome. I always believed that as a kid. And again, because my parents were teachers, we ended up in the north, in the Northwest Territories, and I was a kid up there, so I was running around outside with people who spoke different languages, and I just loved that. I think that was initially how I was attracted to the airline industry, was because this whole mix of people and cultures and languages and perspectives and all that sort of stuff. So that was really how I initially got involved in, like, my field of study initially was languages, and I took French out, and I live on the West Coast, so I wasn't really exposed to French very much in Vancouver. And so that was initially how I became involved in the airline industry. And like I say, the nutrition part was just kind of how I grew up. I just always believed, oh, you had a cold, or you listened to your body, and I might be getting a cold, so there are certain steps I should take to either reduce the impact of that or try and avoid it altogether. And yeah, so that was they were separate, but they were very much a part of me and who I was, from very early on, I guess you could say. So
Yeah,
not so much the flight attendant part, but the,
yeah,
cultural exposure part, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, and for the benefit of you guys, Karen is a Sagittarius, and so she's a very good Sagittarian. uh, and she just posted to Instagram, I think it was the other day, that you were talking about. Here are the five things. Here are
Yeah.
the five ways you know that we're going to get along. Or something like that. It was, you're going to like to travel, you're going to want to talk about travel, you're going to want to hear about my travels. Something like that. It was so funny. It was so cute. Um, so this is interesting. You I like this idea of, this the culture and how that influenced you into um, a way of sort of being in your original career, if you will. And do we still call you guys flight attendants, or is there a new word language for
No,
you?
that's the right word.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I do not like some of the other, like, maybe I don't know. I don't mind the stewards, because I like that word. It's like a guiding word. Anyways, I'm off tangent here. Um, so when you talk about nutrition today,
Yeah.
and the evolution of your journey over the
Hmm.
last however many years, um, what does that really mean to you today when you think about nutrition?
Well, I think people underestimate the power of good food, for starters. And, right now there's so much talk about things like gut health or hormonal health or all that sort of thing. And I'm not disputing that those aren't issues that people have. But when you take care of the foundational piece of your well-being, you don't see these other issues pop up as predominantly. I mean, at least that's been my personal experience. I can use my son as an example. So he's in his 20s now, but he never took a sick day until he was in grade 12. And I loved it because we did a lot of travel, and I loved to ski. So, we would go to the local mountain, and I never worried about him missing school, really, because he just didn't miss school. And I think that was so uncommon. And at the time, I didn't even appreciate how uncommon that was. And the whole way we eat food, like, food doesn't I mean, yes, I eat food that comes out of a package and I use products that come out of a package, right? But I think there's so many things we can have in our environment that support our body's well-being. And we sometimes just don't value that, eating fruit in season, making sure we drink lots of water, keeping our protein content high, all these, and what kind of foods are we having as protein, and what are we snacking on, and all these sorts of things, right? These are steps that we can take that support the body's well-being over time. And even my own parents, although they got involved in the nutrition business because they wanted an out from what they were doing, right? So that was initially why they were involved. And then they became more into nutrition, right? I kind of like loved everything about the brand that they were using. It was all environmental, all that sort of stuff. It was like really my jam. And so I think that they didn't even themselves embrace this whole concept of what are we eating and are we eating whole foods. I mean, we did have home cooked meals all the time because it wasn't predominantly, you didn't go out to restaurants all the time when I was a kid growing up. Like I think now it's much more common
Yeah, I
that
agree.
people go out and eat out in a restaurant, right? So you have less control over what kind of food you're eating, depending on what kind of a restaurant you're going to, right? But even things like that, we just didn't really eat a lot of fast foods, even with our kids when they were growing up, and that was very intentional, and it was because I didn't look at that as food, and I think it's been a bit of an awakening for me to realize that, oh, some people think that that is food. And it's just because they aren't aware,
Right.
of what is food? What does your body need for food? If you think of building a house, right?
I
You
love
can
this
either
analogy.
build it with a great foundation and excellent materials or not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And you can take the time to build the house, or you can take shortcuts and try and fast track your way through things that maybe don't feel like they're all that important. And I get it. So I grew up in similar environment. My mom, actually, well, mostly because my family didn't have the um, the resources, right? My mom was a single mom. She didn't have the resources to be able to continually take, um, the kids through the drive-throughs and whatnot. She made almost everything from scratch. Like I still remember, I still remember coming home from school and there would be this huge basin of dough that was rising on the counter and it was like overflowing, and the instructions when we came home from school were to make sure to like punch the dough back down so it doesn't like drip all over the counter. Anyway, like just little things like that,
Yeah.
right? um but it was also, so I think I had the foundation, but eventually, you kind of move out on your own. You start, being dumb, and you do dumb things, and eventually you kind of come back to your roots, your foundation again. And one of the things that I found really interesting, so you know that I have celiac. I don't do well with gluten or wheat. Um, and one of the things that I have just now become aware of is that some of the research that's coming out around this is that it's not even actually the wheat or the gluten, it's the glyphosate. Is that right? Is that the right word? Glyphosate?
Well, I would have to look that up to be
Okay.
sure
And
about that, but there's a
and I
lot
don't
of
need to
other
take it.
things happening in there
Yes.
with the production of, the raw materials, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is basically kind of what you're talking about.
I think so, and I honestly, here's the thing: the funny part about this, guys, is that I don't really need to know why. I just because I've modified my my diet so much that I'm not even really concerned about why I don't do well more. But that was one of those moments where I could see, like, you come to this new level of awareness and you have to consciously start choosing to do things in a very different way than what I had been doing before. Um, and it brought me back to those foundations of what you were describing, of eating whole food, like whole food, and getting away from, because if you know any, I mean, it's easier now than it was when I first got diagnosed with celiac, but there was not a lot of options for the fast food and the processed stuff and all of that when I first got diagnosed. Now I don't really even care for it because of what you're describing. It's not really real food.
Well, yeah, and I think as soon as somebody has some kind of a dietary restriction, then they gravitate towards a certain group of foods that are, let's say, gluten-free, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that that food is nutritious, right? Because it still could be highly processed.
Yeah.
So how can you get, what you need, what the nutrients that your body needs? Because your body's amazing. Like if you talk about protein, okay, there's a certain number of amino acids that are essential, 9, okay?
Yeah.
And from those 9, your body can make all these other proteins that it needs for different cellular functions, right? But if someone is a vegetarian, for example, most non-meat foods don't have all 9 essential amino acids. So they have to make sure that they intentionally incorporate all of those amino acids into their body, because 9 of those your body can't make. The others your body can make from the original 9, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, and the other thing that, which is what probably was a part of where you were going with the wheat growth thing, is that, when I was a kid growing up, we used to sit at the table with all these scientists who were, in R&D, and they were developing all these different supplements,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they were saying, oh, a tomato isn't what it was 20 years ago. Well, now that's like 60 years ago, right? And so, and people still say today, oh, a tomato isn't what it was 20 years ago. And the reason for that is because the focus has been on yield,
Yeah.
not on nutrient density,
Mm-hmm.
right? So each time we feed the population, which is important, right?
Yeah.
The whole sort of mindset has been about generating more, creating more. How can we make this more, right?
Yeah.
And so they dilute often the nutrient content becomes diluted in,
Because they're chasing
whatever
volume,
food it
not
is that
value.
we're eating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then
Um,
it becomes difficult to get the nutrients that you need eating, you know, people, like, they end up eating calories that are not rich in nutrients,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I'm curious, because of your travel, because of the amount of traveling that you do. I'm really curious, and I'm kind of hoping that this isn't a conversation that is offside, because it's just interesting to me. North America has taken a particular stance on GMO food, and Europe has taken a very different stance.
Hmm.
And yet, I don't know that the population difference is all that much greater. Like, I would imagine, I don't know the numbers. I know the numbers in North America. I think we're close to 500 million people in North America. I don't know what all of Europe um, amounts to, but a lot of the argument has been, because we have so many more people in America or North America, that's why we needed to go there. And there's a part of me that's honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm kind of calling bullshit on that, because I don't see, um, other parts of the world who have as much in terms of population density going down that path in the same way that North America has. How would you correct me? How would you weigh in on that? What do you know about that?
Well, I know that I would prefer not to eat uh, genetically modified food.
Okay, let's start there. Why?
Yeah. Well, because, my body's made to function in a certain way and to take nutrients out in a certain way. And it's kind of a similar argument to like a whole food natural vitamin or a synthetic vitamin, right? There are micronutrients or trace elements or, you know, things in an orange, for example, that have not yet been discovered. I believe that, right?
Mhm.
And your body needs all of it. You know what I mean? So there was a study recently published in the Lancet, it's a journal in the UK, and they were talking about micronutrient deficiencies in different countries.
Mhm.
And the Western world was significantly worse off than some countries which, we would consider less developed. Now, why is that? It for sure it's related to diet.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, what I haven't really done a deep dive into what that means about diet, like as far as growing or, GMO food or,
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff. But obviously, even when we do a good job of buying food, like I don't live on a farm. I'm not growing my own food. I'm getting it from the grocery store, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I intentionally do my best job to get the best food I can buy, right? And but at the end of the day, apparently, according to this journal, the micronutrients that are in the food that I have is not optimum, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think it's really there's a few different reasons for that. Probably cold storage has something to do with that. Probably like where the food is grown. I mean, are strawberries ripening right now in Vancouver? No.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
can we buy them? Yes. So where did that strawberry come from and what did it look like when it was harvested and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
So this doesn't really answer your question about the GMO piece, but I think that you have like what is real food? It kind of comes down to the question, what is real food, right?
Yeah.
And even though we try our best to buy real food, it it can be difficult because of GMO, because of cold
Mhm.
storage or
Mhm.
wherever we are, right?
Mhm. Well,
And
and I think that that's a really like that's just a basic starting point in this. I often talk about this whole everything, everything that we're navigating right now in terms of awareness, consciousness, and empowerment, right? Like becoming aware, just becoming aware is kind of like the beginning. It's like the first step is like I don't even know what GMO is compared to non-GMO. Like that might be a level of awareness for someone because it was for me, right? I wasn't aware that there was a difference between the wheat of today and the wheat of 60 years ago, the tomatoes of today and the tomatoes of 60 years ago. And it's funny because we were talking about that, and he was saying that the tomatoes of 20 years ago weren't the same as they were today. And I'm like, well, God, what have we got now? Right? Like 6 years later, what have we even got in terms of nutritional value in the fruit and vegetables and and if you're a meatosaurus, then in the meat and all that sort of stuff. And it for me, I guess it was a bit of a disappointment, to say the least, that GMO wasn't enhancing the nutritional value of food in some in many ways, it was actually doing the opposite. So I kind of started to have to call bullshit on that.
Yeah. I think sometimes it may often, I'm not an expert on GMO, but I know that sometimes it's used to make plants more resilient to pests
Yes.
or stronger, like in the case of wheat, it changes the size and strength of the
Hmm.
stalk, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So so things like that, we just don't know what the kind of long-term effects are
Yeah.
on the body.
Right.
And so, okay, if you have to eat it, don't keep keep yourself awake all night long worrying about it,
Hmm. Hmm.
but try to make the best choice that you can in your own situation. So,
Right.
like in your case, for example, I went recently for blood work. I asked to get my vitamin D levels checked because vitamin D is a
Hmm.
really good. It's related to all causes. A deficiency in vitamin D is related to all causes of mortality. Anyone who lives in Canada and spends the winter here is probably somewhat deficient in vitamin D, right?
Hmm.
And even when you're exposed to sunlight, it sits on the surface of your skin and then it is absorbed into the
Right.
skin. So, sometimes if we're out mowing the lawn or whatever we're doing outside, we're hot and sweaty, so we come in and we wash it off, before. So there's all kinds of different reasons why we might not have the vitamin D in our body that we need to, but at least
Yeah.
even the traditional medical doctor now believes that we need a certain amount of vitamin D in your body and you can get yourself tested for it, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So when I had my blood work done, of course, I had asked for this test, which we have to pay for, which is fine. It's worth it. It's value for me to have that information, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They also test your B12. So most of the B vitamins are in uh, I keep thinking to say dairy, but it's not dairy. There's a lot of B vitamins in wheat type products,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And B vitamins are really important for everything, your nervous system, hormones, regulating blood sugar, metabolism, all that sort of stuff, right? So, like in your case, I would be really interested because I know that many adults, as we age, so our body systems don't work quite as well. So as we age, we're less efficient at taking nutrients out of our food,
Hmm.
processing proteins, all that sort of stuff, right? So that's why, as we age, it's really important that you keep your protein content up so you have proper muscle mass.
Hmm.
And going hand in hand with that, they measure B vitamins because obviously there's a lot of research coming out around B12 and the importance it has in different roles in the body, which is becoming more mainstream,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So as someone who is celiac, you know what is your B12? You know what I mean? That would be a good question for
Hmm.
you to look at. And how
Hmm.
could you um, enhance the opportunity for your body to have the raw materials that it needs to, find the B12 that it needs to function and
Right.
all
And
that
it
sort of stuff.
and that just, springboards off to, again, back to this idea of you become aware of that, and then you start, to consciously consider, well, I can't have those things because, that isn't good for me.
Yeah, no.
But what are the next best replacements in a natural whole food context to that? And I was talking with somebody the other day, and I don't know why they had this response. I don't know why they had this response, but I was saying, yeah, well, when, it's one of the supplements that I take. And they were like, "You take supplements?" And I'm like, yeah, only because, back to your point, not all of the foods have the same level of nutritional value that we actually need. And I think for where we are right now, I think in some instances it does actually make sense to be supplementing in some ways, in some form, um, but the higher quality stuff, and being able to find even a naturopath or somebody like yourself to be able to help guide that journey, um, it was such a huge, huge benefit for me when I first started to have to deal with the shift away from celiac or the wheat and gluten. And I've probably been through, I'm going to say, 8 naturopaths now, because I either keep moving or they go on to do something else, or they move or whatever. But it's the guide that you need, the people who can see the whole big picture and be able to help you start making those steps forward, right? And it's unfortunate to me. I really wish that, you know, um, those sort of specialized or holistic practitioners, I really wish that they were more a part of the mainstream health system.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we're getting there, definitely more than we were than 20 years ago. But anyways, I keep coming back to this. We become aware. What's the next step? We become conscious about what are we going to do, and how do we start to take back or fortify that sense of personal empowerment that yes, I can do this one step at a time. So, Karen, what was one of the things I think that for you? I'd love to know for you that you were surprised by. What like thinking back over the many things that you've learned, what was the one thing that you were the most surprised by as it related to nutrition and food value and all that?
Well, I think I have been, and my husband and I were just talking about this actually. Um, I have been surprised by what people think is food,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when someone is really well educated, why they find it so hard to um, appreciate that there are nutritional gaps that may need to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's been kind of like a work with the willing uh, piece, right? Because there's so many people that you want to help, or that you see, you identify a gap and you think this could be filled so easily,
Yeah.
but they just don't want to hear it, right? So I have to, and usually or often when it's someone who's really well educated or does a lot of research, that's the part that I find so interesting, right? So,
Well,
um,
I'm curious to. There's a part of me that's going to be a bit of a rabble rouser
okay.
in this, because in my experience it's the people, and I'm not talking about nutrition, I'm talking about the work that I do, like in
Uh,
brand stewardship and um, strategy, that kind of stuff. uh, it's the people who have, quote, highly educated themselves that are often the most challenging for me to work with, because I actually can't introduce even I can't introduce the concept of simplicity as easily as I can with someone who knows that they knows something, but they or has been through that sort of awakening journey, if you will. So I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
That's just me being a rabble browser.
yeah. I think for me, our kids, like we never really went to fast food places. I remember we ended up in Florida one time, when the kids were, I don't know, 8 and 6 or something like that. And it was 11 o'clock at night. And, we just had one of those hellacious travel journeys, and we didn't have any food. And well, we just were going to go somewhere to get something, right? And the only thing that was open was McDonald's. So we go in there, and And like, I can't even remember what I had. I probably didn't have a coffee, but, maybe milk or tea or something like that. I don't know. And, for years, our kids told this story about how, oh, well, they've been to McDonald's once. It was when they were in Florida and blah, 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 right?
I've been to the McDonald's once. People would be like, "Pardon?"
Yeah, but I think for me, like when we started having other people in our home who weren't into food or didn't cook, or the kids would come over for dinner, and they would say things like, this isn't normal. People don't eat like this normally, you know? And I was really, and I think, it's made me a little bit more aware, or a lot more aware, really, of
Mhm,
what is normal for people, and it's probably because they just didn't think it was important. Oh, the body will work. The body will work. We don't pay attention till we're not healthy anymore.
mhm.
And it really doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah.
We can, so I mean, I talked earlier, right at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about I mentioned gut health and hormone health, and which are very, like, I'm learning more about those things right now
Mhm.
because I want to serve our clients better,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
The truth is, though, if we can fix that foundation and create a space for that foundation to be more solid in general by, addressing micronutrient needs through changing your diet a little bit or
Mhm.
supplementing where necessary with some
Mhm.
basic foundational, a multivitamin, for example.
Yeah.
It's amazing the transformation that can happen over 30 days sometimes. Sometimes it's, 60 or
Yeah.
90 days before people see a difference. But you have, I think for me the hardest thing is really about working with the willing, because it's so easy to fix. It doesn't need to be really hard. I think when people think they're like in their 40s or 50s and they think, oh my, this hurts, it's going to be so hard to change. Well, no, drink more water, um, change the way you're sleeping, eat whole foods, and move some
Yeah.
more,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I
And if
think
you
we've
can't do
lost
four, then just start with one.
one. Yeah. I've often thought, just in my own sort of awareness, consciousness, empowerment piece, um, it took me so long to appreciate, and I mean like really appreciate, simplicity. Like, our world has been made to be so flipping complicated that you put a simple solution in front of somebody and it's like, what? No, no, can't be, couldn't be. Yeah, water's a thing, right? Taking a multivitamin, start there, right? And now I just have such an appreciation for how simple it all could be. And when I start to feel that wall of complication coming up, it's like, nope, gotta go. Nope. So, but I appreciate the comment around the B12 thing. I've had my levels checked probably in the last 2 years, and there's nothing that's come up as anything that anybody's concerned by. So that's good, but it is something to just be mindful of, to be mindful of. So,
But probably when somebody diagnosed you with celiac, and I don't want to get personal here, but let's,
no.
is this a part of the conversation? You're a celiac. There's a lot of B vitamins in wheat. This is maybe something you need to look at, right? And
Yeah.
it's water soluble, so you don't really store it in the body.
Yeah.
And if they're testing for it later on, why wouldn't they bring it up earlier? I don't know.
Okay. We can't go down that
Oh, okay, sorry.
because the whole experience was um, was one of probably the biggest red pills that I had in the last 12 years, 15 years, is just seeing how that whole process was managed for me. Was I just, nope, I'll take my chances with a natural path. Thanks very much.
Well, you know what?
And actually
I think
I
that,
didn't take any chances with them because I found I was gifted very, very competent, qualified naturopaths. So
yeah,
yeah.
you know, it's a good place to go for diagnosis. This
Mhm.
is,
Yeah,
that's what I find.
yeah, I agree.
The solution, I have to go and check it out myself, right?
Yeah, yeah, and find multiple pathways potentially. So Karen, we talked a little bit about what surprised you the most. Um, as we kind of bring this conversation to a close, I'd love for us to just circle around this idea of simplicity, maybe even the idea of a simple strategy or simple ideas that can make a profound difference for someone when when you're just maybe at the beginning, or maybe you've been on this path for a while and you're looking for, okay, well, what's my next level up here? So start at the beginning. You're just, I feel like shit. What would I do first?
Um, well, the first thing I would recommend is that, yeah, two things, I guess. Water is one. So, and you know, I mean, let's just jump into it here. You know, look at your poop, search it up on the internet,
Mhm.
and that will let you know whether you have too much or too little water in your diet. Probably too little, because
Yeah,
your body works better when it's hydrated. So, like for me, traveling, as much as I travel,
yeah,
hydration is really important. Helps me deal with everything. And what's a simple way for you to fill that nutrient gap that fits in your lifestyle? You know, I really think a multi of some kind is
mhm,
kind of a non-negotiable. And there's so many different form factors that you can find, um, you know, that probably, hopefully, one of them will work for you.
yeah,
Um, you know, I will say the most expensive vitamin is the one that doesn't work. So if you have to, you know, and an easy way to do that is to get your D levels checked. So if it contains vitamin D, you know, have that checked.
right,
And you know, buy the best one that you can afford, probably,
yeah,
which isn't necessarily the most expensive one, but um, yeah. So because the you know it's your foundation, it's the start of everything, right? It's how are you nourishing your body. And I am intentional about how I eat and what I eat, but do I do a great job 24/7? No, I don't. um and sometimes it's not normally by choice. Sometimes it's out of necessity, where you are, you know, what you're doing, the power goes off, whatever.
yeah.
You
Or it's 3 in the morning. The only thing that's open is McDonald's.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, but if you have sort of like a routine that you stick to on a regular basis, you know, maybe not 30 days of the month, but most days of the month, which incorporates um, being hydrated, moving, and, you know, a basic multi, I think in 6 months you'll feel like a different person just with those. And two of them are free.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Um, and so let's jump forward to people who have maybe been trying different things and they've created a sense of stability for themselves, let's say. So stability and sustainability. What's maybe one or two things that you're coming up to, or you're experiencing, encountering, that's like catching your attention about, oh, interesting. I might need to I might need to weave that in. That's interesting. Like, I'm going to just give you an example, like microgreens. I don't know.
Well, for me, it's protein.
Okay.
Um, and clean protein. So, how can I increase the protein in my diet?
Hmm.
Um, your heart is a muscle. As we age, our body becomes less better at doing things. So, making muscle and it's really important as we age that we move and we do weight resistant things, and muscle helps us do that. It's not just the skeletal system, right? So protein is really important. And they're looking, there's a lot of information out there. Um, some really credible people that are talking about the importance of protein, clean protein as we age. And I think,
Okay, can you stop there and just talk about, for those of us who may not know anything, the difference between clean protein and dirty protein?
okay,
What would you
so
just, how would you define clean protein?
well, so part of it would be like how it's cooked. Is it covered in sauces? Have you have
Okay.
you have you bathed it in, like, I personally like butter, and butter is it's actually a kind of a healthy food to eat,
It
right?
is, yes. Hmm.
So, I don't have a problem with
Pure butter, like
yeah,
real butter.
real butter.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with cooking with butter, but you know, um, what kind of protein are you eating? So and can your body digest it well? So fish is a really good source of protein. Some poultry is a really good source of protein. Um, I think for women who are, in the childbearing years or who are having children, meat can be something that you might want to try and incorporate a little bit into your diet because it is rich in iron and you need that. And, but you don't have to eat a lot of it. And again, how is it cooked and is it lean, right? Because animal fat is not the healthiest fat to have. If you're eating plant proteins, then are you making sure you have this full spectrum and you're getting all the amino acids from your plant protein sources or from your plant protein in your vegetables? Because some vegetables have protein in them too,
Hmm. Hmm.
that your body's going to be able. I think eggs are a really great source. They come in a
Mm.
nice little package, so we keep a lot of hard-boiled eggs in the fridge. Things like hummus, these are all snack foods that you can incorporate it into your day and increase your protein content, right?
Nice. That's great. That's a great explanation for people. Um, yeah, I mean, I follow a lot of people who are talking more and more about, and not from a perspective of I choose not to eat meat because of whatever my reasons are around ethics and that kind of thing. But there is a lot of people I think now in my feed that are saying that I think that we need to revisit this. If it's not an ethical thing for you, revisit it as a potential, um, as potentially through a different lens than what maybe we have in our minds right now. And the same
Yeah.
thing with
I mean,
butter. Butter
yeah.
came across my feed the other day, and somebody was talking about it. And that's why I wanted to clarify butter, not margarine,
No,
butter, like my friend Mandy, who was on a Soul Talk a couple of months ago, she makes her own butter. And I'm like, I love it. I love it.
I watched Mandy actually. She had a great talk. You guys had a great visit together.
She's truly uh, such an interesting individual in terms of some of the choices that she's making, but she comes at it from a health perspective, right?
Yeah,
Really wanting to build a solid healthy environment for her kids and her husband and stuff. So
yeah.
um all right,
And we haven't
so
even touched on that environment.
environment. Oh, that might be we might have to save that for part two. We'll have to do a part two with Karen and bring her back and we'll talk about environment. Uh, for
Yeah.
now, I think we've got some strategies, and I'm grateful for that, because I think that if I can go back to the point where, I started to make these shifts, I really just had no idea how to begin. Like, I just had no idea. And I obviously bought into the whole it's got to be complicated mindset. And the reality is it doesn't, right? Keep it simple, keep it really sufficiently simple, and water and whole foods, and, where we can, where we're able to, yeah, some movement in there, where we're able to, local grown stuff, and 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 then call Karen. And then call Karen. Oh man. Karen, is there anything that you're working on, you and your husband are working on, that you want to talk about at the end here?
Well, we are putting together a retreat in Mexico,
Oh, nice.
and it's going to be mind, body, and soul.
Mm.
So we're super excited. So we booked out this resort in Mexico, just outside of Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
And so my husband has been involved in fitness. He was a runner when he was a kid. So he's been involved in fitness since he was a wee thing. So, and has taught all the different disciplines. So he's going to be doing yoga and Pilates there, and I'm going to be doing the nutrition part there.
Yeah.
And then we have another friend of ours, Adele. You know Adele?
I do.
Yeah. And so she's going to be helping people with the mind part.
Oh, love that.
So,
Yeah, that's a good fit for her.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got this 5-day retreat coming up in the fall. So yeah. So we're excited to get that launched. We're just still working on the website for it, but
Yeah. Well, I'll put, if once Karen's got a link or some details around that, I'll put it below in the show notes. So no matter where you're watching this, if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this in the replay, I'll try and include some information where you can, find your way back to Karen if you're interested in that. I think that'd be spectacular, and not just because it's in Mexico. Mexico's a beautiful spot, but these are. I haven't met your husband, but I know the other two components of this, and they're beautiful souls. They're beautiful souls, genuinely wired to be in service and of service.
thank you.
So, with that, we're going to bring it to a close. Thank you for joining. And your next Soul Talk is on March 25th. And I am just waiting for confirmation on who that is that's going to be joining me. Um, but you'll hear about it if you're in my email list or if you're following me on social media.